Welcome, everyone. Ready to dive into a fascinating world, huh? Archaeology and the Bible, specifically how one book has us rethinking some familiar stories.
Oh, I know this one. The Bible Unearthed, right?
You got it. By Finkelstein and Silberman. They use archaeological evidence to see if the Bible lines up with history or if it's, well, more complex than that.
And that's a big question, really. I mean, for ages, people saw the Bible as straight up history. But archaeology, it shakes things up, gives a whole new perspective.
It's like we're holding these stories we think we know up to the light and seeing what the shadows reveal.
I like that.
And sometimes those shadows tell a different story. Like right away, Finkelstein and Silberman tackle the Exodus.
Yeah.
Did it happen, as the Bible says? They say the lack of evidence for all those Israelites leaving Egypt is kind of a big deal.
Right, and they get into the nitty-gritty, like they point out the name Ramses in the Exodus story, and how pharaohs with that name ruled way later than the Exodus was supposed to happen.
It'd be like writing a historical novel today, set in, say, ancient Rome, but having characters watch TV. Makes you
Mhm.
wonder about the accuracy, yeah.
Yeah, it does.
But before we go too far down that road, let's rewind, way back to the start. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, the patriarchs, they're like the bedrock of the whole Israelite story.
Foundation stones, yeah.
But Finkelstein and Silberman, they suggest archaeology tells a different story there, too.
They say those stories, as powerful as they are, might actually reflect a much later time period. They bring up camels, which are all over those stories. Problem is, archaeology tells us camels weren't common in that region until centuries after the patriarchs supposedly lived.
It's those details that make you stop and think. It's not that it invalidates the stories, but it does make you see them differently. And speaking of seeing things differently, Finkelstein and Silverman really dig into the whole geographical context of these stories, especially the relationship between Aram and Israel.
Now, this is where things get interesting. See, Aram was this ancient kingdom in modern-day Syria, and they had a lot of interactions with the Israelites later on, like around the ninth and 8th centuries BCE. What Finkelstein and Silberman point out is how the stories of the patriarchs seem to mirror the political landscape of that later time.
So it's like they took what was going on later and projected it back onto the patriarchs.
Exactly. Almost like those later dynamics got woven into the stories.
So instead of straightforward historical accounts, it's more accurate to see these stories as, well, narratives that evolved over time, reflecting the experiences and perspectives of the people who told them and retold them.
Exactly. It's like they act like windows into different times and ways of thinking in Israelite history. Fascinating stuff. But hey, remember that other big story, the Exodus, escaping from Egypt? It's so important to how we see history. It's amazing to see how these authors tackle it.
It's huge, right? Oppression, liberation, a whole nation being born. Those themes just resonate. But, and we touched on this, the evidence for this mass exodus from Egypt, it's just not there archaeologically.
And it's not just what's missing, but the stuff that is there, it points to a much later time. We talked about Ramses, right? But also, the places mentioned, like Pithom, supposed to be this big storage city the Israelites built. It fits with 7th century BCE Egypt better, not the Exodus time at all.
Like puzzle pieces from the wrong box.
Yeah.
So here's the tough question. If there's no proof, what does that mean for how we understand the Exodus? Is it purely symbolic then?
That's the core of it, right? But even without proof of the event, the story's power doesn't go away. Think about it. The Exodus has inspired so many fights for freedom. It's incredible. It shows how much people crave being free. It's timeless.
No doubt about it. It goes beyond the history. It's universal now. Resilience, hope for something better, faith, even when it seems impossible. But speaking of big stories and even bigger figures, what about David and Solomon? This is where the book really grabbed me.
Oh, absolutely. Those reigns are always painted as Israel's gold age, right? Wealth, incredible buildings, military power, the whole 9 yards. Except Finkelstein and Silberman, they come in with a whole different interpretation.
Yeah, talk about shaking things up. So they're saying the Bible's version of David and Solomon's kingdom, it might be exaggerated. Hit me with the archaeological facts. What's the real story?
All right, let's start with Jerusalem. Bible says it was this amazing capital, right?
Yep.
Solomon builds the first temple, all that. But digs, they tell a different story. 10th century BC Jerusalem. It was small, nothing like the grand city the Bible describes.
That's a big difference. You'd think there'd be more to back up the Bible there, especially those huge buildings. Makes you wonder, did later rulers pump up the story to make themselves look better? Like inventing a glorious past to live up to?
It's possible. And it's not just Jerusalem. Remember those impressive structures at Hazor, Megiddo, Gezer? Those six-chambered gates everyone says Solomon built? Archaeology throws a wrench in that. They're actually from the 9th century BCE, after Solomon, more likely built by the Amorites.
Wait, hold on. You mean those gates everyone always connects with Solomon? They're from a whole different dynasty? Mind blown. Who are these Amorites anyway?
They were powerful, ruled the north after Solomon, known for military strength and their building projects. Those gates are perfect examples. They're masterpieces, really.
So history got a little mixed up there for a while. Really shows how much work archaeologists do putting these pieces together. But if Solomon didn't build those gates, what does that mean for his reign, for this whole golden age idea?
Million-dollar question, right? Finkelstein and Silberman's take. They say the Bible's picture of this huge, rich empire under David and Solomon, it might be more like a reflection of a later time, when these stories were written down, maybe with a little extra national pride sprinkled in.
So the Bible's giving us a bit of a romanticized version then. Fascinating. Makes you wonder if they were trying to create a story everyone could get behind, a unifying thing for the Israelites. Archaeology really makes you question even the most basic stuff. It's incredible.
Yeah, it makes you realize history's not so simple, right? We see it through whoever's telling the story, their beliefs and all that. But if we forget that image of David's massive kingdom, how did ancient Israel get started? Where did they even come from?
Right. Like we've cleared the board, time to start fresh. Okay, lay it on me. What's the alternate origin story? This is where it gets good.
This is where it gets really wild. They think instead of coming from outside Canaan, the Israelites were already there, homegrown, you could say.
Wait, what? So not migrants. No fleeing Egypt with Moses. They were in Canaan all along. That changes everything.
Right. They're saying these early Israelites were probably just Canaanites living up in the highlands.
Yeah.
Over time, they became culturally and religiously distinct, their own thing.
So not a conquering army, but a slow change happening inside Canaan. What's the proof for that in the ground?
Well, they talk about the pottery, the way villages are laid out up in the highlands. It goes back to the 12th century BCE. Totally unique, different from the Canaanite cities down in the lowlands.
Like they were up there doing their own thing, creating their own way of life. But how do we know those were the Israelites? What sets them apart?
Here's a cool one. At early Israelite sites, almost no pig bones. But other Canaanite places from the same time, pig bones everywhere. Means they ate differently, avoided pork, which matches what we know about later Israelite beliefs.
Wow, that speaks volumes. Not a fancy building or inscription, but it's proof of change, a whole belief system taking root. It's the small stuff that tells the real story sometimes. But what made them go from Canaanite to Israelite? Some big religious moment? Charismatic leader? What was it?
It's probably not that simple. Finkelstein and Silberman, they think it was a bunch of things together. How society was changing, economic stuff, religious ideas evolving, all happening over a long period. Not a revolution, but more like things coming together slowly.
A perfect storm, basically, that created this new identity, a whole new people. Shows you how complex history really is. But this whole thing, questioning what we thought was true, it makes you wonder, how do we even read the Bible now if we're taking this more critical, archaeology-based approach?
They wrestle with that in the book big time. They're saying, look, the Bible's powerful, important, but don't treat it like a history textbook. It's stories, laws, prophecies, all put together over centuries. It shows us how Israelite thought changed over time.
So more like their beliefs, their hopes and fears, not just a factual account. We're seeing how ancient Israel saw itself, its role in the world. But doesn't that lessen the Bible, if we say that?
Not at all. It means we read it differently, with more depth. We see the literary side, the theology, while knowing when and how it came about. It's still got wisdom, inspiration, moral guidance, even if we don't take every story literally.
Like a great painting might not be photographically accurate, but it can still make you feel something. You know, we've covered so much, from Abraham to David and Solomon, even how Israel began. And archaeology, it makes us rethink everything we thought we knew, shows how intricate history is.
It reminds us we're always learning. New finds change everything. That's what's exciting about it.
100%. So to everyone listening, we hope this deep dive got you thinking, gave you new ways to look at things. It's about engaging with these ancient stories, questioning, figuring out history's mysteries, keep asking those questions, keep digging deeper. Thanks for exploring with us. And until next time, take care.